have arrived at the last layer, the last stage. This is the slowest layer of everything. This is the only layer that I call overpainting. Now, maybe I could have called that fuzz layer, perhaps overpainting, as opposed to underpainting. This is the layer where I have to work out any problems that are still existing on the canvas have to be worked out at this point. Okay, you've heard this speech before if you follow me. Last layer, where do you start? Last light opaque highlights, where do you start? 4 options. One is traditional. Start with the furthermost, farthest away object, which in this case, any landscape would be the sky. Start with the sky and move forward. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is start at the focal point and work out from there. Option number 2. Option number 3 is start with the lightest, brightest, whitest thing, which in this case is going to be some of these lights, probably headlights down here. Start with the lightest thing and work from there. Number 4, a little bit hard to describe, but it's if there's something in the painting that needs to be its correct local color, which is not the case in this painting, but sometimes you just feel like you can't proceed until it's usually a mid-tone color, a mid-tone value, but it needs to be the right color. I could almost say that maybe about this tree. I want this particular tree to have more of a green cast, but no, that's not where I'm going to start, and I don't know where I'm going to start. You know what? I think maybe I am going to start with some local color. How about that? I said I wasn't, now I am. I want these buildings, several of these, to have more of a bluish cast, especially these two right here. You can see already have that slight blueness. I feel like, and again, this is part of why do you start, where do you start? Because there's some things you feel like you got to nail down before you can really proceed, before you can move on. And for me, this is one of those. It's sort of like I won't be comfortable until I've got these buildings reflecting the color that I want them to be. So I'm mixing up here some ultramarine and a little bit of phthalo and white. So I'm mixing up a pale blue. I have no idea if it's the right pale blue until I put a little bit of it down on the canvas. And yep, it is the right color. I say that partly because I think sometimes students, they mix up a color over on their palette and then they put it on their canvas and they go, oh, it's not the right, and they feel stupid, like, am I the only one that does that? The answer is no. Human beings cannot discern color apart from context. Nobody can. So you always take your best guess and go with it, but you don't really know if it's the right colors till you start putting it on the canvas itself, because now it's in context and you see whether it's working for you or not. Now, just a quick, since I several months ago added this new element, this new layer of fuzz layer, I have to make this clear. The difference between the fuzz layer and this layer can often be very, very subtle. Because right now, it looks like I'm continuing to do translucent, fairly fuzzy marks. The difference is, in this layer, I give myself the freedom to make hard edges. The last layer I tried not to do. I cheated. Where was I? Up there, and then I ended up I had a soft edge. Right there, I had a hard edge, and I scumbled it up anyway. But in this layer, I am allowed to make hard edges, and then the challenge is I just need to be really careful not to make too many of them. Here's again, when it comes to the chapter on edges and lines, which is chapter F in my book. F is in Frank. The chapter on lines and edges, one of the laws is it's almost impossible for a painting to have too many soft edges, and it's very easy for a painting to have too many hard edges. Okay? So that will be law number F something, and I don't know F what. But that is a very important law, rule to learn. I'm mixing up now a slightly greener version, little slightly more aqua version of that. And can I move this over without messing you up too much? I think so. And I want some of this. Let's see if it's the right color. Yeah, I think it is. Good. This building, in actuality, when you go downtown, it's a glass-covered building like so many others, but the glass is tinted blue. So the building has a very definite blue cast to it. It's not very subtle at all. It's quite blue. It's a beautiful building, I think. Very contemporary. And definitely blue. So I'm coming in here, and now this part of the building is a little bit too skinny. I just discovered. I mean, I've been thinking it, but I just hadn't bubbled all the way to my conscious mind. So I may have just fixed it just by adding a little bit of width to it. Now here we go. What am I making now? Building holes. That's right. Not sky holes, because it's not sky behind these trees. It's buildings. So, and again, I'm being silly because it's an unfortunate name for what we have come, most of us, to call sky holes. Because it's the same. I'm doing the same exact thing, but it's not sky. It's a blue building behind those trees. Okay. Yeah, now I'm going to add some purple, violet to this without cleaning my brushes at all. So it just is more purplish blue. And this building right here has sort of a purplish cast to it. And purple goes real well in the color scheme of this painting. So I'm going to go ahead and again, the paints that I'm using right now all have white in them. They are opaque. And I'm applying them thinly, so they're translucent, but it's opaque paint. And of course, it's because I'm making it lighter. A few minutes ago, before I did the fuzz layer, the painting was at its absolute darkest. Since then, the last two layers I've done, both are lightening it up. Oh, and by the way, let me mention, did I do any pencil? I said sometimes I do pencil after the fuzz layer, and the answer is yes, I did a tiny bit, but not even enough, like 30 seconds. On some of these cars and some random marks over here. So I didn't even let you watch me do that because, first of all, I didn't think I was going to do any. Then at the last second I did. But it was only a few seconds, not worth hardly even mentioning. Too late. Already mentioned it. There we go. I'm going to turn up my music in here so that maybe YouTube won't give me such a hard time. Because my kids are watching a movie in the other room, and if YouTube hears it too much, their computer will flag it and say, "We heard this movie being played in the background." That's a violation of copyright. It's all right. Now I've got this purple on my brushes, and I'm just smushing it over. I'm doing fuzz layer right now, doing all over this whole building just because it was too spotty, it was too speckly. So I think I fixed that. Wash these brushes halfway. And I'm going to pick up some green. And I just happen to have some, what is it? Sap green here on my palette. I use all different greens. I'm not locked into any one set or combination of green colors. I'm kind of all over the map in the green department. But I definitely want some green in that. By the way, here's another Thomas Kincaidism. Painting trees in a scene. A slight exaggeration here, but I'll say it anyway. Make no two trees the same color green. Don't mix up a color green and do one tree and then do the tree next to it or the tree next to that. With each tree, change greens just a little bit. I learned that from good old Thomas. Just by looking at his paintings. I can learn from anybody, and I have learned a lot from a lot of people. As I said earlier, I get a kick out of saying good things about Thomas Kincaid because it irritates the snobs among us. And snobs need to be irritated. I'm sure I've been guilty of snobbery. I have, no doubt. I hope I've outgrown it permanently. That's probably not the truth, but I probably haven't. I'll probably still have episodes, but I try to avoid it. Okay, so I'm mixing up, every time I reach over here to my right, my palette, I'm mixing up a slightly different color of green. So I added a bunch of yellow ochre this time. And one of the things I tell my students when they're doing this final stage, last layer of painting, well, let me back up and say, here's what happens to so many of my students. If they're following me, they have followed me through steps A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and we get all the way to level K. It's not always exactly 12 layers, but it is tonight. We get all the way to the last layer, and they breathe a huge sigh of relief because now we're painting in a technique and a method that they're familiar with. Now we're painting with opaque colors. Are you with me? Students, I hope you're listening. And if you're watching this video after you've taken my class, then you can probably hang your head in shame. I hope not. But fully half of you did this in the class. Even though in spite of all my protestations and warnings to the contrary, nearly half the class, when it gets to this stage, they'll go, "Whew, thank God, all that silliness, all that Dan Nelson way of painting is done. Now I'm feeling a little insecure because my painting looks so different from what I'm used to, but now I'm painting with opaque color so I can paint the way I know how." And my students get into this stage of the painting and they absolutely ruin it. They plaster opaque paint over the entire thing. And they should walk out of my class saying, "Well, that was interesting. I don't know why we just spent 4 hours doing all that underpainting when I covered the whole thing up in the last layer." And the answer is, yeah, because you weren't supposed to cover it up. So two things I say. One is less than 15% of your canvas should have opaque paint on it. Translucent doesn't quite count as opaque. There's a difference, right? But less than 10 or 15% of your canvas should have opaque paint on it. And if you do an opaque stroke, you need to leave daylight or air between that stroke and the next one that you put down. And that's pretty, yeah, I stick by that rule myself pretty closely. So again, now I'm doing, again, a little bit of, this could be called opaque. What I did a minute ago was translucent. Am I on camera? Yeah, okay. This is, again, a lighter color to indicate, of course, the light hitting the right side of the tree. Let me, and I make a big deal about this in my book. Is that fair to say? No, I make a medium-sized deal about it in my book. Play of light is the most important aspect of a painting, right? Right. Play of light. Repeat after me. Play of light is the most important aspect of a painting. And I'm going to be a little bit mean here. But I'm telling you I'm being mean, so, I'm not really being mean. Okay, here it is. You don't get any points for getting which way is the light coming from correct. In other words, play of light does not mean which way is the light coming from. That is not play of light. And yeah, I make a pretty big deal. I'm going to say a pretty big deal about that in my book. Why don't I give you 0 points for getting that correct? But I will dish you, fire you, eliminate you from the competition if you get it wrong, of course. But you get no point. Why? Because way too many students feel like that's a really big, high level of achievement. And I just want to shift your thinking so that you don't think that's a high level of achievement. Because if you feel like well, I got I got the light coming from, I got that right, then you feel like you can sit down, pat yourself on the back and say, yay for me, I got light right. When you really haven't even entered the realm of play of light yet, all you did is get the light coming from the right direction. That doesn't count as play of light. I don't know if any of that made sense to you, but I'm going to leave it right there. Because I don't want you getting stuck at that point and saying, well, I got the play, I got direction right. Direction doesn't even enter. You don't get any points on the board. You can get kicked out of the game for not getting that correct, but you don't get any points on the board for getting that low level of achievement correct. Now, maybe on your first painting you get credit for that, but on your second one, nope. Okay, that's just something you do. I don't want you burning lots of calories thinking about which way is the light coming from. It becomes second nature very quickly. By your second or third painting, that becomes second nature. Okay, so I've done, so far what I've done is local color. Blue on the buildings, purple here, and green on the trees. Now I'm going to change gears a little bit. I am going to clean these brushes. And I'm going to switch to some really bright white highlights on this painting. So I'm picking up my titanium white, again, Alkyd, fast dry titanium, a tiny bit of yellow ochre. This is the way that I like to warm up my whites, is not with yellow, it's too yellow, it's too lemony, but yellow ochre is just about the perfect color of yellow just to warm up your lights. Okay, here we go. That's one of the biggest bright lights is right there. Let me zoom in here and give you a little clinic on painting lights. Okay, so hang on to your hats. I'm going to do this one street light real up close. Forgive me for shaking you all over. Is that going to stay there? It is. Okay. You can see that I just put down those fairly thick layers of paint. Do you see that right there? Now the glow is actually the product of 2 or 3 layers. It's already there. But I want to make that glow even more glorific. And often I'll do that with a chip brush, but because this is such a small spot, I'm actually going to do it with a fan brush. Here's what I want you to see. Okay, so that's very wet paint, medium thick. And notice I do this quickly. You cannot do this slowly and achieve the same. Next stroke is going to go this way. Now I've run out of paint here, so I'm applying more thick paint with this brush. Now I'm going to go down to the right. And I missed the canvas. It's not quite the right angle, but it'll have to do. Again, more paint, and now going down this way. There. Now that's a nice glow. Are you with me? I'm not done yet. What is the whitest, brightest, lightest color that a human being can put on the canvas? The answer is warm white applied with a palette knife. And that is a bright, that's a bright street light. Okay, let me let you see it up here. Whoops. Plus, people really get a kick. There you go. People get a kick out of seeing impasto. They get a kick out of seeing thick paint on a canvas. Now, once again, if that were regular titanium white, that spot right there wouldn't be dry for at least a week and probably 2, maybe 3 weeks. Hello, I'm glad I rarely do I see your comments. I'm so sorry, but yeah, love the sky. Thank you. The answer is yes, the sky is nearly finished. I'm going to have to think really hard about anything that I'm going to do to the sky because there's not much. Let me continue now. Have you got the whole painting in view? Almost. Let me adjust this a little bit. Okay, so now I want to continue to do some bright stuff, and I'm going to, not on every one, but on many of these paintings, many of these lights, I'm going to go through the 2 or 3 or 4 step process you just saw me do. So here's my clean fan brush. Here's 2 car headlights. You cannot do that slowly. If you do, it'll look like you did it slowly, and it'll look like fill in your own bad word. Okay? This car is essentially invisible. The only thing we can see is the headlights. And here's a palette knife again. Why is the brightest, lightest, brightest color we can put on is it with a palette knife? Because a palette knife puts on a slab of paint that is smooth. If you apply it with a brush, it's got grooves in it, and the grooves create shadows. Okay, I think you probably already knew that, but there. Now, having done that, I'm going to do some reflection. Even if it hasn't been raining, there will be reflection in the pavement, unless it's gravel. But even then, even on a gravel, there would be these streaks of light. And I'm going to mess that up a little bit down here. Okay, I have received a number of phone calls in the last few minutes that I need to answer. This is a good place for me to take a break. I'll be back in just a little while with continuing the same layer, the same process. And again, this is the slowest process, so it's a good thing for me to break this session up into 2 or 3 takes. Okay, be back in just a little while. Thanks so much for watching.